What is up, my Limitless Minds family? I am Jo Lohman, rocking the red, white, and blue in honor of the United States Women's National Team and the 2023 Women's World Cup, which is going on right now. And on Friday, to discuss the mentality behind the World Cup, I want to invite in Josh Lifrak.
I'm here. I made it. We're here.
No one better to discuss neutral thinking than someone who just broke down with his car and made it onto the live. Tell us about it.
The battery's dead. I was gone for 2 weeks and I hadn't driven my car in like 2 weeks. And then I started it miraculously this morning, went paddle boarding. Saw four, not one, not two, not three, not four dolphins, a manatee and a ray out there today.
Wow.
It was just like nature day. I was supposed to be out there. And then when I went back to get in my car, it just wouldn't go. So, Lane, what's up? Lane's here.
Yes, okay. Lane is in the house. We're talking Women's World Cup, Lane. So throw us some questions. What have you been seeing in the Women's World Cup? And Josh, I want to ask a quick question of you. What has been some of the biggest surprises for you in watching the Women's World Cup so far?
What's really interesting is athleticism, right? And so there's a lot more athleticism in the world, and as the game expands, you're starting to see these countries that maybe in men's soccer, for whatever reason, they don't have any infrastructure and are good, but like a team like Haiti, and I was just like blown away by them. Like, wow, they're super competitive, they're super athletic, they get up and down the field really well, and I just was, like that's a very small country with not much of an economy, and here they are, competing at a very high level. So that was definitely a shock. The other factor is, how close the games are. You're not seeing 12-0 shellacking. You're not seeing 9-0. The highest so far, I think, was Germany won 6-0. But other than that, everything's been. So there was I think Spain put 5 up on somebody too. But outside of that, everything's relatively close. 1-0, 2-0, 2-1 game, 0-0 ties. Like it's super competitive. And you and I talked about this before the World Cup. And I don't know what it is about traveling across the country, across the globe. Like I remember South Korea, Japan, Men's World Cup. Like there were some like interesting results there. Things kind of get put on their head a little bit. Brazil ended up winning that, so that wasn't super shock. But in the earlier spaces, obviously the U.S. beating Portugal in that World Cup in the men's side, and now here we are in Australia. It's winter, it's 50 degrees, rainy, bad conditions. It's funny because I was like 3 a.m. You're just like, wait, there's a game on? I'm so confused. I don't even know what day it is. I'm watching the U.S. It's like I'm watching the U.S. on Wednesday in America, but I think it's like Tuesday of like next week in Australia. I don't even know. So that was kind of funny too.
We're all in this time warp, especially people who are actually waking up in the middle of the night to watch these games, which I have to give a huge shout out to. And I love that you mentioned Haiti, Josh, because Haiti is one, I would say, of several countries that are either in the midst or coming off of a battle with their organizing body in terms of just mistreatment, lack of resources, lack of investment, even to the point of abuse. So when we talk about the World Cup every 4 years, how important it is for these teams, especially the ones that just qualified for the first time. But then you have the psychological toll that an event like this takes on someone and the mental fitness you need to approach this in a way that the pressure doesn't consume you. And you're able to deal with all the distractions in the women's game, especially with these battles with their federations. How do these players, really be able to take on all this pressure and compete at the highest level, knowing that there are a lot of distractions going on?
Well, I think that is a reflection of whatever that organization is doing. So, you think about Canada, that's a perfect example. They're struggling right now. Like even their men's team is like bankrupt, right? I mean, it's crazy. So how do they manage it? And I think it's just about the people in the room. If your coaches are allowing that distraction to come in, if they're complaining about it, if they're, if they don't address it and just deal with it, then that can spiral out. I've seen it. I saw it in baseball, certainly, where, baseball, it's a sport where there's so much downtime that the guys just talk all the time and they end up complaining about stuff. But the good organizations, when I was with the Cubs, certainly a great organization, the communication was so clear and the clarity was so overt that the guys didn't have much to complain about. They couldn't find stuff because it was all taken care of. So I think that's one of the biggest things is the coaches and the technical directors and the people in the room with the players, helping them navigate that stuff by being focused on what's truly important.
Yeah, it reminds me of when you always say clarity over certainty, Josh, of making sure that things are clear and name it to tame it. If we don't talk about the elephant in the room, then the elephant just grows in size. And so it's important for these coaches to address these issues head on, so then they can eliminate as a distraction, so they can move forward and worry about the X's and the O's and what happens actually on the field.
Without a doubt. I mean, that's exactly it. And that's the whole key. That's what matters most is and it's funny because like when you're playing, and you can attest to this, you're probably not thinking about gender equity and the amount of money you're making during the game. You're thinking about, hey, where's this pass going to go? Who do I need to tackle? Who do I need to mark? Right. That stuff I don't think gets super impacted, but what gets impacted is your energy and the amount of mental energy that you have left, because you only have so much during the day. So if you're stressing out and focusing on this stuff before the game that isn't really about the tactical execution, then you're going to kind of get drained a little bit. So then you won't quite have as much to give. I remember there was back in the day, Nike had a commercial like my 100% is better than your 100%. And I think that kind of plays into it as well. Okay. So,
Lane is throwing great.
Like tons of stuff. Lane's taking over the live.
So I love it.
On live here. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
Well, Lane's kind of tapping into there's so much historic significance when you have a Women's World Cup. Yeah. And I agree with you that most of these players aren't thinking about the historic impact that they're making because they have to worry about the next right step. So what is my next pass? What is my next move in this game? But meanwhile, swirling around them is this historical significance of, the largest watched game in FIFA World Cup history. You have the first trans athlete competing in a FIFA Women's World Cup. You have these debutantes, right? Haiti making it. You have teams that are, for the first time ever on the global stage. And so you have this large impact. But meanwhile, what I hear you saying, Josh, is for these athletes, all you're worrying about is that next right step, because otherwise you're going to get overwhelmed and really your energy is going to be spent on things that you can't control.
Yeah, that's my sense of it. But honestly, I haven't been to a World Cup, right? This is where Travis can come in and help us out. And maybe next week when you get on with Travis, you guys can talk about that. Because you played internationally, right? And so you would know better than I would. Now, I was a part of a World Series run, which was, historic in nature. So much so that 5 million people came to the parade afterwards. It was the seventh largest gathering in human history when the Cubs won the World Series. So I can tack to it there, but that's like, it's so different than a month-long tournament. It's so different from, winning a group and getting into a knockout. It's completely different. So that's what I'm kind of curious about. Let's subject. Dewey wants it. Dewey wants it.
Dewey's pumped about the World Cup. He's already given us predictions next week.
Talk about Rose LaBelle. Come on. What are we doing? Let's talk about Alex Morgan. What are we doing, guys? That's what Dewey's saying. So here's my question to you. Like, as you watched, the first two games from the U.S., and let's just kind of bring it back to that. What have you noticed in terms of their mentality on the pitch? And kind of just maybe break that down, because that's what I'm sure a lot of people don't ask. They ask about, technical, tactical stuff. Yeah. What are you seeing from the mental side of this team so far?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it comes into play so significantly because the U.S., they are a team that thrives under pressure. When the target on their back gets bigger, their play gets bigger. And that's something that has made them so admirable over this past decade, is that truly they have had the target on their back globally. And I think this World Cup is a little bit different because you have so many new players.
Yeah.
So when you have 14 players that are making their debut, you are going to have a level of nerves that is novel for them, right? Because they've never been in this situation. And then you have the first game. So for me, when I was thinking about their first game, it's almost something that you want to just get under your belt. You want to have a good result. You want to play good enough that you win the game. And you just want it over with so everyone can stop talking about how it's the first game for these 14 debutantes. And I was not surprised by the scoreline of only being 3-0 because of that, because the nerves really do play a part. And Sophia Smith even spoke about that post game. So it's for the newer players, it's how do you settle those nerves? How do you ground yourself before what is the biggest game of your entire life?
Right.
Knowing you are playing for the best team in the world, where the expectations are through the roof to win the third World Cup in a row. So I think, again, if we zoom out too much, it just gets so overwhelming for these players that you have to have that flashlight instead of the floodlight of like, okay, what are my 3 keys this game?
Yeah.
You know, what's within my control? For someone like Sophia Smith, it's, you know, make great runs in behind, finish my opportunities when I get them, you know, like just very, very simple things, because as we know, Josh, the best do less, not more, especially in moments that are just have this much gravitas. So I think the mental aspect is just as important as the physical aspect when it comes to these types of events that happen every 4 years. What are your thoughts behind it?
Yeah, so it's interesting. The nerves definitely were apparent in the first game.
Yeah.
You could see it. You could see it with their touches were heavy. Their you know their reactions were just a half tick behind, which is probably why it was only 3 instead of 5, right? Or 6 for that matter, right? So you could kind of see that. And then in addition, I felt like because this was the first time this specific starting 11 was fielded, you could see there was a little disjointedness too. Our athleticism was going to win out. Our technical ability was going to win out eventually, our speed, etc. But I also felt like that got exposed in the second game because I thought Holland, especially in the first half, was tactically superior to us. And it was 1-2 touch pass, 1-2 touch pass, 1-2 touch pass, 1-2 touch, take space. Boom, I'm attacking space. They knew where they were going. They had a head of steam about them. They weren't waiting to see how it unfolded. They anticipated and were on it. And the U.S., I thought, got caught completely on their heels after the first 10, 15 minutes. First 10, 15 minutes, I thought the U.S. was on top of them. They were aggressive. They were forcing turnovers. And then Holland just a little shift, a little tactical nuances, the savviness of European clubs, having played this game their whole lives, been watched it since they were babies, seeing spaces that the U.S. didn't see, attacking the middle. And that first goal, it was, you know, I wouldn't say it was a defensive breakdown. I would say it was tactical superiority. By the Dutch. And then a clinical finish.
Absolutely.
Right. And so, and then the U.S. didn't really respond until the second half when Rose came on. When Rose came on, then it was, you know, she's a game changer. She's just that much better. So
I want to throw a concept to you, knowing that we both worked in sports, but different sports. And this comes into play in the Netherlands game. And also I felt like in the Vietnam game is that I believe when there are certain players on the field, you have those players that have like the je ne sais quoi, right? For a lack of better words, that the entire team, their performance elevates. You just psychologically feel better, more confident. And I think what's been interesting about this World Cup is that those players for the U.S., Becky Sauerbrunn, their center defender who's out with an injury, Megan Rapinoe, who has like swagger for days, right? I think those are a few players when they're on the field, and Rose Lavelle, clearly when she steps on, that the entire team just coalesces, right? And just feels better.
Yeah,
do you find that like in baseball, Josh? Do you find that in the sports that you work, team sports, where it's like certain players just have this effect on the team?
Yeah, there's certain pitchers that do, right? And it's always interesting in baseball. It's always the middle of the field. Center fielder, shortstop, second base, pitcher, catcher. If you have a catcher that calms everything down, the whole team changes, right? They're the only ones that can see the whole game, right? They're the only ones behind who have a different viewpoint from the fielders. The pitcher and how he holds himself and the calmness that he provides, and then that middle infield, like if those guys are in sync and those guys have, you know, in the center fielder as well. So that's the whole key is the middle of the field for baseball. But yeah, so it's different there because it's so individual, that sport.
Yeah.
It's a team sport, but it is individual too. So I think what you see though, it's interesting. Somebody was talking about Messi
Mm-hmm.
being the best walker, best person.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I guess I never knew this, but I guess like in the first 5 or so minutes of a game, he kind of just walks around.
Mm-hmm.
And he doesn't like he's not sprinting for balls. He's just kind of like surveying what's happening and taking it all in. And it kind of like makes the defense be like, I'm aware of him, but he's just kind of not involved just yet. And all of a sudden, boom, he goes. But he kind of like walks and he sees everything. And he's a person, obviously, that does the same thing. And you're right. Like Rose is definitely that person for the U.S. where she is somebody who, if a mistake is made, she's going to clean it up.
Yeah.
And when she has the ball at her feet, you just have your head on a swivel because the whole dish is
magical. I love how Lane is translating this into the business world and the military world, that these types of leaders, let's call them leaders because that's what they really are. Like your captains really give a sense of calm to the entire group. And I agree with you, Josh, that is the difference maker of Rose Lavelle. She is the ace up our sleeve. And when she gets the ball, it's magical. You know something creative is going to happen, which I think allows the other players to shine because Rose takes up so much attention.
Yeah.
And those are truly special players. And I think that's something the U.S. has been lacking in the first few games is having that player that just like makes the whole group rise.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I'm slipping my name, but the woman who is playing midfield, who's playing the 10 right now. What's her name? She's like Jersey.
Lindsay Horan?
No, not Lindsay Horan.
It was DeMillo.
DeMillo, yeah.
Yeah.
It was interesting watching her because I want to talk about this, Martin, too.
Definitely.
The Lindsay Horan's reaction, because we always talk about being neutral. And so I want to talk about neutrality within emotion in a second.
Yeah.
But what's interesting with DeMillo is she was getting like fouled hard.
Yep.
And they were very, again, tactically astute. We're going to slow her down. We're going to get her some knees into the thighs.
Yep.
We're going to, and her response to it wasn't to lift her game and adjust. She got frustrated and angry. And it was really interesting. I thought the referee did a poor job pulling out the yellows. She could have pulled out 3 early, like both on us and on the Dutch, and she didn't. She just kind of, it was one of those deals where it's like, you know, when you get fouled and you're like, hey, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 fouls, do a card, please, right?
Yeah.
You know, like, so it should have been one of those. But she got I thought she got discombobulated, and her touch started to lag, and I thought she was ineffective by the end of the first half.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, Martin brings up a good point and so did you, Josh, about how do you will naturally feel emotions throughout the game. They will ebb and flow. And how do you utilize those emotions to serve your performance versus, you know, pull away from your performance? And I thought Lindsay Horan, and she was quoted after the game of saying, like, don't piss me off in a game because that just makes me want everything more. And so she seems like someone who, you know, gets truly amped, but is able to channel that anger, frustration, drive into pushing her performance a little bit higher. And you saw it in that goal because it was right after that foul where she was livid, right? The referee had to pull them both over, their teammates at Lyon. Like, I don't even know what happened in that conversation, but clearly she was able to channel that emotion and have it serve a higher purpose of scoring that tying goal.
Yeah, a lot of times what I've seen is certain players respond differently to emotions.
Yeah.
Right? And certain players, when they get angry, their focus goes shoop.
Yeah.
They get really locked in to like everything starts to slow down a little bit. It's kind of interesting. Their heart rate goes up, but everything else starts to slow down. And I've seen players go the other way where they get angry and then they're just like a mess. You know, like they can't even function. So it really kind of depends on the person. But obviously, Lindsay used that to kind of get more neutral.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Like she got angry, which is not neutral, but then she channeled that into her play in the execution of the task at hand and putting more energy into that. Yeah. Which I thought was really unique and wonderful and you know, a great sign.
Yeah.
That's what great ones do, is they take that emotion and they put it into the game.
It's a great demonstration that our emotions won't be neutral, right? That's just the nature of emotions, but we can channel those emotions into neutral actions and into actions that lead to higher performance, because we're able to focus even more on what's important and the task at hand.
Yep.
So looking forward, Josh, knowing that we need to win against Portugal, we need to win, I would say, by a decent scoreline. What advice would you be giving to the U.S. players going into that Portuguese game?
Don't first of all, don't worry about how much we win by. We'll get to that in the game. Let's win the game first. That's the first thing. The first thing is the tie, right? First thing is tie. Second thing is to win, because that gets us through. So I would focus on. So that's the first thing. Then the second thing is, how do I do that?
Yeah.
How do I make sure to do that? Well, whoever I'm playing against, if I can blow by them, blow by them. If I can win that tackle, win that tackle. If I can be first to the ball, be first to the ball. If I can, track back to help on defense, I'm going to track back to help. I'm going to put everything out there. This is there's no rest for this. This is the World Cup.
Yeah.
This is it.
Yeah.
This is win or go home.
Yeah.
And so that's what I would say is really tasking the players to recognize what their job is and 1.5 it. What do I mean by 1.5? Do all of my job and be willing to do half of another's. That's the game of soccer. And so then it becomes, in terms of focus and concentration within the world of football and soccer, it is, hey, how do I make sure that my head's up, make sure that I know what's coming around me, make sure I can anticipate, make sure that I know where I'm going to go with this ball before I get it, and then be able to divert from that quickly if I need to, right? So it's a little bit of that. So a lot of times it's really interesting. People don't talk about soccer being a mental game. Mm-hmm. It is an incredibly mental game. Yeah. Because it's all about external focus, narrow focus, external focus, narrow focus, constantly.
Yeah.
No matter what. And then the last piece is urgency. Yeah. Don't even think. You should be mentally exhausted after the Portugal game. Just completely mentally exhausted. You'd be switched on from the first kick. Mm-hmm. Boom, boom, boom. What's happening? Where's the danger? What's going on? How do I get forward? Where can I make a run? Yeah. Next play. That's what I would say.
So,
what would you say?
Yeah, what I'm hearing you say, and something that Travis talks about so frequently, and he really knows this from being at the World Cup in Qatar, is actions are greater than outcomes, right? Focus on actions over outcomes.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah, because the outcome is a byproduct of great actions, right? So what actions should I be taking in this game relative to my position, relative to my role? And that's a role even of a bench player, right, Josh? Like, that's a role of a sub. That's a role of the third string goalie who's not going to see the field unless, thunder strikes or lightning strikes the first two. So it's understanding what is your role and what are the actions within my role that will lead to the outcome that we want. So it's the how over the what, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So what is the outcome? It is the end score, which we can't fully control. And the how is the actions that allow me and my team to get to that outcome. So really narrowing that focus, like you said.
Yeah, and I would say there's no expectations to go into it with, I'm going to do my job. I'm going to attack that job. I'm going to do possibly half of another's. But I don't have any expectations of the result. I'm just going to go do my job as hard as I can, and we'll look up at the end and see where we're at. The score can influence tactics within the construct of the game. But let's not super worry about it, other than it dictating what I'm supposed to be doing at that present moment.
How does it differ, Josh, if we're going to flip the script and take it from the Portugal perspective and their coach? And like most opponents against the U.S., how do you speak to your players knowing that the chances of them winning this game are very slim? And so it's the attitude of, like, we have nothing to lose, yet we have a mountain to climb. So how do you, as a coach, as a mental skills coach, motivate them to kind of reach peak performance?
Well, the whole key is what you said there, peak performance. So what is peak performance? Is doing your job when you're supposed to do it, right?
Yeah.
Right. That's the whole key. And so how would we help the Portuguese team? Well, you would have to understand tactically exactly what everybody's supposed to be doing and when they're supposed to be doing it. Yeah. And then it's upon them, the concentration and the focus, to make sure that they're doing that and that they're switched on all the time. Mm-hmm. And again, it's the anticipation. So because the U.S. is faster, stronger, quicker, has better touch, has better skills, what you need to do then is you need to have better mental skills. You have to anticipate better than them. You have to get into spaces. You have to take some risks, believe it or not. to go into different spaces that maybe, shit, if I get caught out here, I'm going to have to bust my ass back. But I'm willing to put that energy into the game, and I'm willing to risk that in order to possibly do something incredible. Portugal has to win. The U.S. has to tie or win.
Yeah.
So, at a certain point, Portuguese are just going to have to throw caution to the wind and go, and then see where the chips land, But also, like, not making too much out of it either, right? Like, it's the World Cup. It's huge, but also, like, what I need to do is just execute. And executed before. Am I asking you guys to do anything you've never done before? No.
Yeah.
Just go execute. So there's
the neutrality. I love that. It's almost more important in these moments where they are so big, they are so large, to stay neutral, because you don't need a coach harping on how big this moment is, because the players know it, right? The players know it. They feel it. The stadium is packed. The lights are on. You need a coach that's going to stay more neutral so you can allow yourself to focus on what's important and the task at hand. So Portugal they truly will have a mountain to climb. And so does Australia, the host. I'm like worried about Australia.
Who are they playing in the third game? China?
They're playing Canada in a must-win game for both teams.
That's crazy. That's great. This is what I'm talking about. Upside down World Cups.
Seriously.
That's what I call them. Upside down World Cups. They're on the other side of the world. We watch them in the winter. They're in the winter. It's like 3 a.m. Upside down World Cups. Crazy stuff happens.
Well, I will happily admit that I will not wake up at 3 a.m. I just don't think I can do it, Josh, to watch the game. Not with a new baby girl. I'm like, all the sleep I can get is like cherished. I'll have to watch it on playback.
Wake the baby up. This is the bed. No, let's go.
This is what they make recordings for, right? This is why they have TV recordings, and you don't check your social media and you watch it the next morning.
Exactly. So I can never. Here's my problem though: is I can never sleep. I like toss and turn all night.
Oh, you do? That's so cute. That's really. Yeah. So will you be up at 3 a.m.?
Maybe.
Yeah.
I might watch it. We'll see what happens.
If you're tossing and turning, you might as well wake up and watch the U.S.
Yeah, exactly right. One last question for you. I love that. Okay, you have been on major networks recently talking World Cup stuff, right?
Yeah.
CNN. I think I thought. Where else have you been? I saw you a couple other places.
News Nation. It's another national program. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So you've been on these big national programs. How do you prepare to go on those? Like, what's your mentality going in talking to Jake Tapper? I mean, handsome, suave guy that he is.
He is very handsome. Let's just start with that. I've learned in my public speaking grad program. So I do vocal training every morning, Josh. So I prepare my voice in the morning to be able to speak throughout the day, so that I'm using every part of my voice. And that's an important first step, because I feel prepared. And then my second step is to look over my notes, because I've taken notes on key points that I want to make. What did I see in the game that I feel like I could bring a unique analysis to? And what's fun about my interviews is that they're usually on stations it's more about the bigger picture. It's more about the larger issues at play. So also being able to speak about the game intelligently, but also always tying in, the historic impact that you and I have been talking about throughout the day. So it's understanding, what do I want my message to be? And then how do I get it across in a way where their listeners will appreciate and understand? So I don't want to be too high level. I also want to have a critical analysis that brings a unique perspective. So notes, vocal training, and breathing. Definitely some breathing work before I get on the screen. Yeah.
Preparation's in the preparation, right, Joe?
Yeah.
There it is. So that's awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that. We're up against it.
Let's do it.
It's 1 o'clock. So we're gonna get out of here. We're gonna get some rest so we can watch that game.
Yeah.
And we hope that this was a interesting topic for everybody that watched. We put more of a sports lens on it. So, Joe, thanks for being here today. It's awesome.
Thank you, Josh.
Thanks for Lane and Martin and Carla and everybody who showed up today. And we're back on Monday. I believe it is Andy and Carla are going to be on.
Yes.
Pretty cool. That should be cool.
Dynamic duo right there. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy the World Cup.
Enjoy the World Cup. Go USA!